So welcome to the Meadowbrook and Millcreek Station Area Plan Overview and Virtual Open House. We have a short presentation kind of walking you through what a station area plan is, some ideas about both, how we arrived at those ideas, what the intent is of the plan, and what next steps are. We will take questions at the end, so feel free to use the chat anytime. I'll keep an eye on it. And if there's anything pertinent, you can also direct message me if you have any questions. But with that, I'll turn it over to Marianne Stuck, who is our project manager, who's going to lead the presentation.
Thanks, Leah. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for participating today. We have the project team here, as well as representatives from South Salt Lake and Mill Creek City, and our consultants, Fair and Peers. We're focusing on the transportation aspect. So for you to be able to participate tonight throughout the presentation, if we go to the next slide, we do have a Mentimeter, which if you go to www.menti.com on your phones or computers and you enter that code, you will see throughout the presentation some questions pop up, and we would love to get your feedback on those. And then obviously we can also have, like Leah said, open discussion, questions in the chat, or Q&A at the end of the presentation. But yeah, if you want to use that, or you can also use the QR code to go to the Menti page. And to get us started, we'll start with kind of a little icebreaker question. And just to understand who is here tonight, we would love to hear how are you connected to the station areas. Are you a resident? If so, do you live near Mill Creek Station, or do you live near Meadowbrook Station? Are you a landowner, or maybe just a tracks commuter that uses those stations? So if you want to pop up that answer, it will start showing here on the screen. There's no wrong answer, so feel free to share. We'll give a couple of seconds here for people to, okay, we have one person that is close to Mill Creek, one close to Meadowbrook. That's great. Some Mill Creek area residents, some resident and tracks users. Of course, we have city staff. Okay, great. Well, it was just kind of a little test to get you comfortable with the Mentimeter. And like I said, we will be kind of using it throughout to take a little pause in the presentation and ask some questions. So I think we can get started if we go to the next slide. You might be familiar with this, but you might be not. So just a brief introduction of what a station area plan is, which is what we're focusing on today for both stations. It was introduced by House Bill 462 in Utah in 2022. So it's mandated by the state, and it focuses on planning around half-mile radius, which is roughly like a 10-minute walk of any tracks or front-runner station. It does look at what is land use, zoning, transportation, and urban design all together to create a framework for bringing in some different land uses, density housing, services, and creating more enjoyable and affordable neighborhoods around the stations, and really encouraging development around this area so people use transit more, and making these walkable areas too is one of the key things that are part of the station area planning process. This slide shows the two areas we're focusing on with this specific project. You can see Mill Creek Station and the half-mile radius with the dotted line, and then the same for Meadowbrook Station. You can also see the thicker dashed black line that shows the city limits. So we're working with two cities at the same time. We have South Salt Lake to the north, and then Mill Creek, which takes kind of a portion of the Meadowbrook Station to the south. we're not working with Murray on those little slivers that are still part of that half-mile radius. These are some drone shots that show some of the station areas just to help you get oriented. So this is Millcreek Station. We have 3300 South kind of at the forefront here. You see the rail line with the station platform. If you're familiar with the area, we have a Polo Burger there kind of in the front. And then some opportunity sites that we identified at the beginning of the process and that we will focus on with some recommendations in the presentation tonight and as part of the station area plan. If we move to Meadowbrook, we have 3900 South here. You can see the rail, the tracks line crossing right there at the bottom of the picture with the platforms. We have the UTA parking lot to the right side of the rail, which has been identified as one of the opportunity sites. And then we also have some on the other side of the rail line. So just to give you a little bit of context so you can kind of see where we are focusing on with this, with some of the concepts we're going to show on later tonight. Some of the project goals we're looking at is obviously identifying, is there any economic potential of the area that we can help incentivize? We are focusing on these opportunity or catalytic sites because there are areas that can change, that can trigger change in the future for both stations. We are certainly exploring a variety of housing opportunities and making sure we increase the availability of housing options and also affordability of housing for various age groups. We are always thinking about sustainable environmental conditions when we work on these, improving safety around the stations, increasing transportation choices. There are some opportunities of accessing additional funding for some of these areas, depending on the amount, the percentage of affordable housing that can be included. And also we have involved key stakeholders throughout the process. From the beginning, we have been working with UTA, Wasatch Front Regional Council, which is WFRC here, property owners, business owners, and also have been in communications with UDOT. The project timeline, it's been a pretty short project. These projects have to be adopted by the end of the year. We started in March. We are right now here at the end of August where we are reviewing the preferred concept plans, and then we're going to move into implementation, preparing the final station area plan document, and moving into adoption with both cities in October and November. Just to give you a very high-level overview of what we have done as much as as far as engagement, and you might have been part of some of these. So if we go to the next slide, we just have a summary of some of the things we did as part of our engagement. We started with launch event that was part of South Salt Lake's annual mural festival on May 10th. We had about 40 people participate there, and the team facilitated on-site engagement, asking about some key things the community wants to prioritize for the stations. What would be their preferred land uses? We did ask about transportation, public space, and in general, like high-level initial feedback. We also had 2 station pop-ups in May in both stations, similar kind of feedback and questions we asked the community. And then in June, we held a 2-day design charrette where key stakeholders were invited. There were local property owners, developers, advocacy groups, representatives from both cities, from Wasatch Front Regional Council and UTA and UDOT. And we worked with them in design activities where they provided very valuable feedback about the area's needs and what the future might look like for both of these. We also had an online survey that was conducted from July 11 through July 30. It's about 3 weeks was available, and we had about 15 questions where we ask respondents for input on more specific things. So what type of land uses do you want to see in the stations? What do you like about some of these big ideas, about some alternative concepts? And so we have about 264 complete responses. More people went in, maybe looked at it or answered some questions, but not all of them. And then there were several themes that came up that were kind of consistent throughout some of the open-ended questions, and those are the ones you can see at the bottom of the screen related with connectivity, green space and trails was a big one, enhancing safety and traffic calming measures, and of course housing, affordable housing, came up quite a lot, but also having access to retail and maybe smaller scale grocery stores in some of these areas. If we go to the next slide, you can see here some of kind of the key takeaways from the survey. So on the left side, we asked about preferred uses, and the two colors represent the two different stations. So the top three uses that appealed to respondents the most were neighborhood park, neighborhood retail, more like a local business, and affordable or attainable housing. There was also some appetite for like a larger potentially grocery store in some of these areas, and also for sale housing was selected as one of the top choices. And then on the right side of the screen, we asked about kind of some big ideas for each one of the specific station areas. So for Millcreek, people really wanted to see more green, maybe having a connected green parkway, a community park, and also spaces like a plaza or like green edges. And then for Meadowbrook, it really focused, we have been on discussions about an idea of bringing in a recreation center here that would serve the larger community, not just the immediate neighborhood. That has been very popular since the beginning. Also improving pedestrian connections and creating a connection over the tracks line. And again, thinking about green buffers and green spaces was also one of the top alternatives on this question. So with that in mind, we're going to move over what we have come up as the station area concepts for both of those areas. And we're going to pause after each one of these to ask for your feedback and some initial reactions. So if we go to the next slide, one of the things we wanted to highlight here is walkability and access to green spaces came up for both areas, especially for Millcreek when it comes to access to green space as a big challenge. Right now, like you can see in that diagram, there is very limited park access within walking distance of Millcreek Station. There is only one park that lies within a 15-minute walk of each one of the track stations, and other parks like Sunnyvale, McCall, or Lincoln Park are beyond a 15-minute walk. So it's more like a 20 to 30-minute walk. So this has become a clear challenge that we have focused on both station area plans to really improve walkability and make places more accessible, and think about how can we bring in green spaces into these areas. So if we go to the next slide, you will see here a graphic that focuses on what could be a proposed mobility and greenway connectivity plan. And here we are really also incorporating ideas that have come up in the Murray North Station Area Plan, which is the one to the south of Meadowbrook. They have been focusing a lot on greenways and pedestrian spaces and connections. So we have been working with that. Also some ideas that UDOT has of connecting some of the stations to some key areas. But basically, we're really thinking about enhancing north-south connections, including connections to Millcreek, Cottonwood Creek, and the Murray North Station area, east-west connections, especially to the Jordan River, and then trying to work on creating some gateways or small public spaces at key intersections or areas within the station. So really focusing on placemaking and the neighborhood identity and providing spaces where residents and future residents can gather and meet, which both areas are really lacking. So with that, we're going to move into, okay. So here, these are kind of a big vision and principles for each one of the stations. So we're going to start with Millcreek. And we see this station as really having the opportunity to transform from an auto-oriented industrial area, which is what it feels right now, to a more interconnected neighborhood with some activity, vibrancy, more housing diversity, and definitely new green spaces. So the main concept that we're going to jump into a second thinks about more of a series of interconnected nodes along 3300 South that will bring activity to the area, responding to recreational and gathering needs, and also thinking about north-south connections that help facilitate pedestrian movement and move people a little bit away of 3300 South that is a not very welcoming street, and we have a little bit of limited ability on what we can propose there. So one thing I forgot to mention, and maybe, Helen, we can go back to slide 14. Oh, no, slide 15, sorry. Is that as part of the process, we worked with both cities and stakeholders to identify what could be key opportunity sites. This was one of our main goals from the beginning, is identify these sites that where redevelopment can happen sooner and can help trigger change in the area. So the parcels that you see in gray around both stations are those opportunity sites. And while we are keeping the broader look at the station area and how they work together and how they work with the other station area plants next to them, we're also focusing more on these opportunity sites and what could happen in those. So now we're going to jump to some ideas for those specific opportunity sites. And we're going to start with Millcreek Station. And this image is just to orient you a little bit, but you have 3300 South at the forefront here, 300 West and West Temple. So we're kind of looking at that block in between those streets and beyond, which was identified. It's currently kind of a semi-vacant block. It was the former South Salt Lake Community College site. And so if we move to the next image, you can see what the concept is showing for this area. So the site that we were just showing in the drone shot is the one where you see the blue building there, and Apollo Burger is, which is the white building that we're keeping. And so some of the big ideas in this concept is to create a higher density residential hub along 3300 South, which is what you see kind of on the south side of the street there with some 4 to 5 story apartment buildings. And then to kind of moving to the right, we have more like of a medium density residential neighborhood, maybe with townhouses and smaller apartment buildings that helps transition into the existing scale. We are also showing some retail along 3300 South on the east side of the rail station. And really thinking about the need for more green spaces. You can see that we have kind of a linear park running in the middle of the southern block there of the opportunity side. Focusing a little bit more inward here than facing 3300 South, again, just because the street is not very inviting and there's limited possibilities of what we can do there, but trying to bring in green spaces in the kind of inside the blocks, connecting them throughout the station. We're showing a new pedestrian crossing on the west side of the tracks line where you see that little orange arrow crossing 3300 South, and that would connect to a transit plaza on the other side. So creating these pedestrian connections throughout. We're showing a green buffer where possible along the main road to separate a little bit the pedestrian from the flow of traffic. And then blue building would be services or some civic use on that side. Like I said, we're keeping the Apollo Burger building in this one. So with that, I'm gonna pause here and see if you have any initial reactions to this specific concept for Mill Creek Station, and you can input those on the Mentimeter. Anything that jumps out to you about some of these ideas. It could be positive, it could be some other things you have in mind, just pretty open. Feel free to share. Okay, so housing, it looks like it's a good thing that we're adding some housing and different densities of housing, not just focusing on one, but different options like townhouses and medium density. Okay, grocery and retail. We're showing some grocery and retail there on the red areas. Green spaces. Want the area to feel safer at night. Okay, that's a great comment and something we can make sure we specifically address safety in the plan and some recommendations related to that. Will the high density have ground floor? I'm concerned given the amount of use. Yeah, right now, that's a great question. The way we're showing the high density is actually without any ground floor retail because of kind of the same thing you're addressing there in that comment. So, I mean, it's something to discuss, and when redevelopment comes to this area, it could be considered, but we don't think it necessarily needs to be mandatory because of that same idea that maybe there is not such need right now. It could be in the future, though. Okay, great. Well, those are great comments. Maybe let's move to the next. Is there anything that we're not addressing with this concept? Are there any other needs in this area that you feel are not addressed with some of the ideas we just discussed? Okay, we don't see anything coming up. Improve pedestrian crossing on 3300 South. Yes, so there are conversations to improve or create a pedestrian crossing just west of the tracks line, where you have a little orange arrow going across. I'm not sure if that's the one you're referring or maybe some other ones across 3300. And feel free to speak up, whoever put that comment. Okay, well, we do have a section that shows some of the ideas for 3300 South. So we have one to make any changes. Okay, yep, we are just gonna talk about that. So I'm gonna pass it over to Maria here to talk about 3300 South. It is a UDOT road, so that is a challenge because there's more limitation on what we can do. But yeah, Maria, if you wanna talk a little bit more about the right-of-way improvements.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So we were limited because it is a UDOT road and it's so close to the freeway, and we kind of needed to maintain the same number of travel lanes here. But what we were trying to do was reclaim at least some of the space, so we have narrower travel lanes than are currently shown there today, and wider spaces for pedestrians and a bit more green space. So we're still showing 3 lanes in each direction, but instead of having the two-way left turn lane in the middle, we're proposing a planted median instead, and then adding this buffer on the that would be the south side of the road, and then adding wider sidewalks on both sides. So this does assume that there's a little bit of right-of-way expansion in order to accommodate those wider sidewalks. But if the idea is that we are, kind of redeveloping these spaces wholesale, we should be hopefully able to negotiate getting some of that space.
And I'll just add really quickly that we had kind of a mixed response in the public survey. Some people said you've got to make this safer and narrower and easier to cross, and other people said, please don't take any lanes here because it's really busy and there's a lot of traffic coming off the freeway. So it's kind of a mixed bag from the public side.
And we have a question for this slide too. So I think in the next one is if you have any more specific feedback on 3300 South and the section we're showing, or any other ideas of improvements, taking into consideration what Maria just explained about this road. Okay, so liking the buffers, but a little bit worried about the U-turns traveling east. I don't know, Maria, if you have any thoughts on that. And crossing, I know we have heard a lot about the pedestrian crossings too.
I think it's a fair point. We might be able to preserve left turns at intersections and then fill in the planted median in between the intersections. So yeah, they might still have to go a little bit out of their way in order to do that. But this might provide a little bit more green space in the middle of the road.
Okay, well, thank you for that feedback. I think we can move on to Meadowbrook Station. For Meadowbrook Station, the idea is to build off some of the activity that's already happening in the area, especially on the Millcreek city side, and make it more of an inclusive, mixed income and mixed generational neighborhood. We have heard a lot for both stations about senior housing and making sure we're providing housing for different groups and different generations. So really diversifying the housing supply, and also thinking about what type of health and social services can support this kind of diverse housing neighborhood, and thinking about trail connections to the Big Cottonwood Creek, the Jordan River, and are there more connections that could be incorporated in this area? Development on Meadowbrook, we think, can be more oriented toward 3900 South. It's a road that is owned by both cities, so there is more room for making improvements and transforming it in the future. And we're also looking at West Temple as one north-south road where we can be facing and creating more of a front door strategy, strengthening the identity of the area and connecting residents to a more walkable, mixed-use neighborhood with transit, retail, and various community amenities. So similar than in Millcreek, if we go to the next slide, you will see that we focused on one of the opportunity sites. So you have 300 West, West Temple, and then 3900 South. You see the station there in the background. And the site that you see right there, kind of at the front of the image, and then on the Millcreek side, next to West Temple, some of the sites we have been focusing on this specific station. And if we move to the next slide, you will see what the preferred concept is. This is just kind of an overview of all the areas we have been looking at, and you can see that we are kind of identifying what is part of South Salt Lake City, which is kind of on the north side of 3900, and then Millcreek on the south side. So we'll jump into kind of these zoomed in areas just to walk through each one of the cities by themselves. So we have a preferred concept for the South Salt Lake area. which focuses on this idea of having a recreation center. Again, this would be an amenity that serves a larger population and could really become kind of a center of attraction here and bring a lot of people to Meadowbrook Station and really change the character of the area. Together with the recreation center, we would incorporate a community open space that's kind of between the blue building and the medium density housing, so you cannot see it too much, but there would be like a central green space there. Also thinking about green buffers between 3900 South and then on the east side of the rail line, so having some sort of linear park there with trails that can both buffer the buildings that are on that side from the rail and create offer some more connectivity on the north-south direction. We have some medium density residential development, like you can see there. We're showing some infill on the UTA parking lot because it is kind of underutilized, and if there is a parking structure, it could absorb both parking for those buildings and the station themselves. And then we're also showing a pedestrian connection over the tracks line here that would be connected with kind of the new development on both sides, and then also connecting to Harmony Park and West Temple on the east side. As an alternative to this idea, if the recreation center would not happen, we have this kind of option B that keeps some of the elements like the UTA parking lot infill, but instead of having the recreation center, it shows like a higher density residential hub along 3900 with some services. The building that is kind of left of that community open space could be like a senior housing living building, and then we have some kind of medium density with some townhouses and some courtyard homes, like almost like small single family homes on the north side of the site just kind of to merge into the existing neighborhood and scale. We are showing a larger kind of transit plaza here too on the west side of the station, connected with a new pedestrian crossing on that side of the rail that kind of connects to the other side, and a multi-use path along 3900 South. So those are some of those kind of big ideas for the Meadowbrook station on South Salt Lake. And then if we move to the next slide, we are focusing on the Millcreek City side of the station. Obviously, this all has been kind of envisioned as one idea, so the uses are complementary, but here we're thinking that there could be some mixed-use buildings, which are the orange ones that you see facing 3900 South, to create a little bit more activation, have retail on the first floor and then apartment buildings on top. And then to the south of that block, it would kind of decrease in scale to a medium density residential edge, community neighborhood park. And then again, the buildings in blue would be some civic or service buildings that would face West Temple. We are seeing West Temple as a more pedestrian oriented street, where we could have some commercial uses along it and really kind of help activate it, which is what you see here kind of on the east side of West Temple. We have some commercial, some mixed use, and then some residential uses there too. And then here you can also see the green buffer along the rail line that provides that north-south connectivity through this linear park and also helps buffer those residential buildings from being too close to the rail. And I think we have a question after this. Yeah, so I know we're looking at kind of the two cities here. So if you have a comment, maybe just kind of let us know for what area you're thinking of. If it's overall, that's good too. But yeah, let us know if there's anything that jumps out about these concepts, or if you have any initial thoughts. Okay, so liking the green and the rec center idea. Senior housing. more green spaces and parks. Would the rec center be from the county, and how do they determine where to build? I don't know, Spencer, if you want to answer that comment directly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know too many details other than the county has identified some sites that they may consider for future community centers or rec centers, and they have indicated that one of those sites would be in South Salt Lake. So that's really all the detail that we have. But something that we would love for them to consider, definitely.
Yep, it's definitely an idea that we have heard support from the beginning. So we're going to try to highlight it in the plan and see if we can help pitch it. I don't see per the earlier what evidence with that more ground floor retail would actually be used. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know that we have specific evidence. I think our train of thought here is that 3900 South could transform more as a street and become a much more inviting street than 3300 South, just because the cities have jurisdiction and they can make changes, and we'll show those sections in a minute. But just thinking about how 3900 South as a street could change in the future, we think that that could really trigger more commercial use along it versus 3300 South, more like walk-to uses. So that's what that is based on. Okay, great. Well, we'll move into the anything okay, specifically for South Salt Lake. Do you prefer any of the two concepts? And I know we heard some support for the rec center already, so let us know from both alternatives. So the one with the rec center was basically option A, and then the one without the rec center and more housing and the Central Park was option B. So if you have a preference, let us know what that is. Okay, so if the rec center comes in, making sure we have some more dedicated green space, I think that's a great comment. And thinking about small for sale housing, and yeah, the concept B has that, so it could be something we could incorporate for the rec center. Okay. Great, let's move to the next slide. Anything we're missing here that you think we should consider for any of the two cities in this area? Okay, and if we don't have any comments here, we can move to the sections. Oh, former off-leash dog park. Okay, people use Harmony. That's a great idea. Okay, do we want to jump to the sections? And Maria, feel free to describe these.
Yeah, we're kind of taking a similar tactic with this one, trying to narrow the travel lanes, narrow some of those paved spaces, and create more green space. So the difference with this here, this does have the same number of travel lanes. It's a little bit less chaotic than 33rd South. It doesn't have an interchange there, but it is still a very busy, valley-wide corridor. But we can tighten up the lanes a bit. The existing lanes are 12 feet wide, so we're bringing them down to 11. And then it does have pretty wide parking lanes on the sides right now, so we're taking those down from about 13 feet to 8 feet, and then kind of reallocating that space for planting areas. So more planting buffers along the sides, Similarly, more use for multi-space or multi-use paths along both sides. This is an area where there is a trail actually planned for actually both sides of the street. It's kind of crossing from one side of the street to the other right now as part of the Utah Trail Network, if you guys are familiar with that. But in this area, we're proposing that they actually have multi-use paths on both sides of the street to accommodate folks that would be visiting the land uses along those sides of the street. And then again, replacing that center two-way left turn lane with a planted buffer and some trees.
So yeah, any feedback on that proposed section for 3900 South?
That's a good question. 8 feet is a pretty standard width for parking, on-street parking spaces. We can also use the curb and gutter for a bit of parking space as well. And I think, yes, the path is supposed to go all to the way to the river. 39th South is a major corridor for active transportation. And I don't remember how far it goes on the west side, but I know there are plans to go pretty far on the east side on 39th South. But yes, it's a major corridor for active transportation.
Okay, we want to jump to West Temple.
Yeah, not a whole lot of changes here. Really, the biggest change that we're doing is moving the bikes off the street and onto a multi-use path that would be on the west side of the street. So where it says sidewalk there and it's showing the 12 feet, that would actually be a multi-use path for all kinds of users. We're also adding wider park strips here on this one and wider sidewalk on the east side of the street as well. So not really a huge change, but a little bit different.
Okay, so any comments on this one?
Yes, 33rd to 39th, but I think you could take this south of 39th as well. Be better to have a consistent cross section kind of throughout the whole area.
I would just say as someone who lives in the townhomes right across from Harmony, it's already a sort of treacherous crossing point. It's just a flashing yellow on Plymouth Avenue. Or yeah, I think it's on Plymouth. And just thinking if there's, a couple hundred more residents nearby who might be crossing that, it's worth considering a formal cross light, or at least the bigger, I don't know what they're called, the red then yellow flashers.
The hawk beacon where people are actually
Mhm.
required to stop. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, good idea.
Okay, well, with that, I think this was the last slide of our presentation. So, yeah, Leah, I don't know if there's any questions or if anyone has any questions, you can speak up now.
Yep, nothing in the chat, so we can take open questions or comments. If there are any.
I'm curious from the resident in those townhomes, is Plymouth Ave pretty highly trafficked in cars and pedestrians, or do you say one more than the other?
I mean that street is not heavily trafficked by cars. I'd say it's mostly people driving to park in either of those. But there is pretty frequent crossing activity, both because of the people in the units as well as the apartments just south of us, and then also people coming from the tracks and crossing over there. It's one of the natural crossing. There's a path that leads from the tracks to our townhomes. And so people walk down Plymouth to then cross into the park or onwards to Maine or like to the health center and things like that that's already in the park. Yeah, and I do think something that might need to be contended with the design for West Temple is people. I mean, it does not feel like a safe place to walk, to cross or drive or to bike. I wouldn't want to bike on the street. There's I think a multi-use path makes sense. I'm curious to see how that aligns, especially because a number of the townhomes on West Temple front onto West Temple. So I could also imagine people not wanting to walk out of their front door and into the path of potential bikes on that side of the street. It's something to consider. But I do think people right now treat West Temple like as a shortcut when you get off of the highway to not go down Main or State, where it's like pretty busy to turn on either of those and pretty congested for their own reasons. And I do think it's like the linear path next to the tracks might help that. Having a pedestrian bridge maybe will help some of that. But yeah, I really think having a safer crossing to get to Harmony, and maybe also some traffic. I can't remember the term, but there's like no traffic slowing right now on all of West Temple between those two streets. Yeah.
Traffic calming, I think, is the term you're looking for.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, those are good suggestions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And like Leah put in the chat, we have a project website, and we will be posting this recording of the presentation tonight in the website. So if you have any neighbors or friends or people that live in the area, feel free to share so they can take a look at this.
And then I would also say we will be going to, I'm trying to find the dates, both cities planning commissions and city councils. So there's opportunity if you're really in support of the plans to share at those public meetings. You can also share with us directly here in the chat on the recording. I'm trying to find the dates.
It's October and November, yeah.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
Just for the record of the recording, I really would want retail to thrive on 39th, and it's very frustrating as a local resident that there's so much empty stuff there when it's like, please, like, just give me like a coffee shop or like a grocery store or like even like a corner store. And I know one existed briefly in the hub building, but they had issues with not having parking, and so they closed. Right? And so I think I appreciate, at least on the Millcreek side, that retail seems to have parking associated, at least for some of it, because I do think, despite our hopes that it will be a more walkable area over time, I don't know if stores will be able to survive the transition to that if you don't give them, if they don't have some other options, and it feels clear that the current foot traffic, and especially if there's foot traffic that doesn't have to go through 39th, like even thinking about all those, that infill, that sort of east and northeast of the tracks, like those folks, if they don't actually walk past 39th, they're not going to use that retail. I think that's what we're seeing now, right? There's probably hundreds of people and families that live in these townhomes, that live in the Via apartments north of it, that live in the other ones, and not to mention the other 3 big apartments on 39th, and that clearly is not enough demand to keep anything alive.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that.
So the Millcreek Planning Commission date is October 15th, and the South Salt Lake Planning Commission date is October 16th. And I'll put those in the chat as well. And I did put the project website in the chat, so feel free to pop back in a couple of weeks, and you can see those dates and locations for those public meetings if you have any, if you want to participate. Any other questions or comments? Great. Well, thank you very much for participating.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.